No time like the present.
Yes. What is going on, my specialist? SPC here, and welcome back to the Midwest Cantina podcast. So today I've got myself a brand new guest to the channel. Would you please introduce yourself, sir?
My name is Andrew King III, but y'all can call me Andy from King's Comics.
And guys, I have linked Andy's channel down in the description below, so make sure you guys head on over, check him out, show him some of that SPC love. And we are here today because we are going to be talking about comic book movies, maybe probably throw in some Star Wars, and probably talk a little bit about some animes and mangas. So, Andy, why don't you kind of tell us your story? What kind of first got you into comic books?
Yeah, no, thanks for asking, and thanks for having me on the show.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah, I guess, well, my dad was huge into comics growing up. I mean, he loved Marvel. It's funny, he had like a ton of just Spider-Man, Luke Cage, all these comics, but they got kind of, I guess, sold up. Like, he was in the army, and I think they got sold at a garage sale or something because his sisters, my aunts, just didn't know what they had. So, yeah, it was brutal. He had like old school comics. And then I guess fast forward. So, he mentioned that he was just huge into Marvel. And then he would draw Wolverine. He would draw some Marvel characters for us growing up, my brother and I. And then we would just dress up as like Superman or Batman for Halloween. And whenever I would like wait for my parents to pick us up from school, I'd just be in like the library as a kid, just reading through the huge like Spider-Man omnibus, like the Stan Lee Spider-Man. Yeah.
Yes.
I guess we fast forward, and I always kind of like read comics, touch and go, Superman, Batman, especially Spider-Man. And then my physics teacher, Mr. Byrne, my physics teacher in high school, he brought up this comic. He brought up Watchmen, and I think that is the comic that got me like really adamant about reading comics, because then it occurred to me it wasn't just superheroes, right? It was you could tell bigger stories about superheroes, not about superheroes. I mean, that same year, I think Scott Pilgrim came out, and my brother showed me Scott Pilgrim. I didn't realize it was based on a comic. So that was like the first comic series I bought, was just a bunch of Scott Pilgrim. Oh, and I guess then I would like, whenever my mom would take us to Barnes and Noble, I would me and my brother would just chill in like the manga section and be reading like, honestly, we'd be reading stuff like Dragon Ball Z, Yu Yu Hakusho, like a lot of stuff that was D. Gray Man, like a lot of stuff that was like popular at the time.
That's what I do right now when I go to Barnes and Nobles with my woman. I head over to the Star Wars section first, and then I usually check out the comics area, and then I head over to the other side, and I usually go check out the mangas. I'll usually check out like Death Note. I'll even check out the latest like Dragon Ball Super, and just even see what else is in there for me.
Yeah, no, and I think we talked a little bit. Yeah, we talked like a little bit earlier about Death Note, and I mean that one. Well, it feels like it's gotten popular because I mean the movie came out. You had this one shot kind of following up with the series because it's nearly 20 years old now, which is insane to me.
Yeah, that's pretty crazy to think about. Like, it just seems like it's kind of even still like freshly new.
Yeah, and I mean to the point that it feels like maybe just because it's streaming now, or has been for like, I don't know, the past year maybe, but like more people are finding out about it, discovering it. I know, it's just crazy, like growing up with that in high school, and then fast forward 10 years, people are like still discovering it, and it's still like, having rewatched it, having like reread some of the manga here and there, it still feels fresh. Like, it still feels like just a good story that wasn't like, there's not a nostalgia factor.
So now, I guess leading into another question, I guess what's your favorite? How am I gonna word it? Well, I guess first of all, who's like your favorite superhero out of all like your comic book heroes?
Oh man, dang it! Sorry, it's funny. I'm trying to think because there's like really two big answers, right? But if I had to go just flat out, hands down, favorite comic book superhero is going to be Spider-Man.
Yes, thank you. Spider-Man is my all-time favorite.
Oh yeah, well, I mean, like I was. Yeah, so I guess so. Then you've got, then you've got Spider-Man, and then I guess my other kind of big superhero is Invincible. He's I'm not like sure how many people. It's a pretty popular comic series, but it's out of Image Comics, the same guys who do The Walking Dead and Spawn. And
okay,
yeah, no, but it's cool because in fact it's the same guy who writes The Walking Dead, Robert Kirkman. He created this hero, actually kind of like a Goku type hero. Who? Yeah, it's so funny. I think it's Mark Grayson is his name. I need to go back and reread. But he discovers that he's got the same powers as his dad. He's half alien. This alien species called Viltrumite, and you find out that, long story short, his dad, Omni-Man, is like the Superman type, most powerful hero on the planet. But he came from his alien empire, the Viltrumite Empire, to take over the world because humans are genetically similar enough to Viltrumites to be able to breed and help continue their galactic conquest. So you then, from there, it's a comic that you see the character keep growing, evolve past high school, growing into college, growing beyond that, having to conflicting moralities. I mean, it's just a really beautiful comic. It's kind of like if you had Spider-Man or a lot of other classic heroes who started out young, if you got to see them keep growing and not just kind of stay time locked.
I think that's one of the few things that actually makes Spider-Man probably one of the more unique and probably even more fan favorite heroes, is because he's actually younger. He's a young high school kid, and he's basically in a weird way taking on the world, where you got your Batmans, your Supermans, your Iron Mans. They're all grown adults, where Spider-Man's, still going through the whole puberty thing. He's still, trying to get the girlfriend. He's still trying to keep up with grades and trying to make Aunt May happy and everything, but he can't exactly do all that while he's trying to play Spider-Man.
Oh, no, absolutely. And that's actually what's kind of part of what I like about the MCU Spider-Man is, well, I just enjoy the Marvel movies in general, right? But I really enjoy alternate takes on superheroes, which is part of why I like DC Elseworlds, where you've got Superman Red Sun and things like this. But I like the MCU Spider-Man a lot because one thing that is critical and is crucial to Spider-Man's character is that he's very inexperienced, untrained. He wasn't a hero who he wasn't in the military. He wasn't a super soldier. He wasn't an X-Men. He was literally just a teenager trying to figure out how to use his powers and do the most good for the most people. So the MCU Spider-Man, you get that background of having a support network like Tony Stark and the Avengers, so that you actually get to see Peter be kind of trained by heroes. So that's really nice.
Yeah, and I definitely agree with you. I know one of the big things about Spider-Man too is he's very, quippy. He's got all the one-liners. He's making jokes while he's fighting. Even during Civil War, when we first actually get to see him and he's going around Ant-Man, he's like, "Hey, you guys remember that really old movie on the snow planet and the walkie things?" And it's like, man, Tony, where did you find this kid? Wait, no, I think he's got an idea.
Gosh, that's also just weird thinking about. I mean, that, right? Kind of back to Star Wars is the fact that Disney now owns Star Wars and Marvel, and I'm still, in a weird way, I'm still trying to rationalize that. I mean, I get Disney has a lot of money, but the fact that you have these characters in the same universe, and that still takes my breath away.
Yeah, in a weird way, I always picture it because I kind of saw it in a fan-made trailer, but it's almost like Disney has the Infinity Gauntlet on, and each and every single stone is a different company.
Right.
You got Marvel, you got Star Wars, you got Fox. I don't even remember what else they own, but oh man, then one of these days we're gonna get that snap. Yep.
I mean, that's also what's interesting about the MCU in that regard is a lot of people don't realize that, because I was talking with someone last night about this, but a lot of people don't realize that when the MCU formed, right, it was using basically the least popular heroes possible. Is because Marvel was going bankrupt, right? That's why Disney bought them. They were going bankrupt. They had already sold off all their popular heroes cinematic rights. That's why Sony had Spider-Man, Ghost Rider, Daredevil, Blade. And the hysterical part is like all of those characters were bought by Sony because they were more popular, or they were seen as more popular than Captain America, Thor, Iron Man, Black Widow, Hawkeye. Like, it's Hulk. And now those are like some of the most recognizable heroes like on the face of the planet. It's insane.
Yeah, it's weird how like it's in a weird way, yeah, like a different like mirror thing from like the comics, because like I think still regardless, Spider-Man's going to be one of the more popular ones, but like even when like these MCU movies were coming out, I thought they were going to like tie in, you know, with like the Spider-Man with Tobey Maguire and Hulk with Eric Bana and the Punisher with what's his name, Thomas Jane, and all them other ones, because I can willingly say for me they're a guilty pleasure. Like I love the trilogy of Spider-Man films like to death. Like they'll be my favorites.
Whoa! You mean like the Raimi Spider-Mans? Like even like Spider-Man 3?
I will even say I actually like Spider-Man 3. I like it a lot more than the Amazing Spider-Man 2.
Oh, okay. Actually, I'll give you that one. Yeah,
that one's a hard watch, but
gosh,
like, I would definitely say too, like I like the Punisher from there. Like that's probably one of like the first like R-rated movies that I saw.
Especially for an R-rated comic book movie. Like people talk about Joker and Logan and Deadpool, and they forget like Blade and Punisher were R-rated.
Yeah, because like I told my dad it was a comic book movie, because like I didn't know, I just saw Marvel plastered on it, and all of a sudden you start watching it and like people are getting shot in the head and stuff, and my dad's like, "Whoa, what is this?" I'm like, "It's supposed to be a comic book movie."
Yeah, and I mean, which ironically, or I guess coincidentally, like the Punisher started out as a Spider-Man character. You know, he was hired by Miles Warren, the Jackal, to take out Spider-Man, you know, to perform a hit on him. And then I guess he got so popular that now he's the character that you see today.
Mm-hmm. So I guess my next question for you now would be: do you have like a all-time favorite comic that you have read over your time of like being into comics?
That's honestly, I keep trying to do like a top 10 comics or like a top 10 comics. Like comic book movies are kind of easy because I haven't like seen nearly the breadth and depth of like comic book movies as I've seen. I mean, the breadth and depth of comic book. Yeah. But as I've read comics, but I mean, picking a single favorite comic is really, really, really hard for me. I mean, if I had to say one off the top of my head, right, I would say that Watchmen is probably my favorite comic of all time. My favorite, and like I know I'm gonna regret that answer because I'm gonna like go to my comic shelf or go through my list and I'm gonna be like, oh, but no, off the top of my head, yeah, I'd probably say Watchmen is, just because it had that emotional impact to me of in a weird way, yeah, of like first having my eyes open to more mature comics, graphic novels, and the like.
Yeah, I definitely. I mean, I've read, you know, my fair share of comics. Like Spider-Man is what started me into comics, and then even to like I'd randomly go to like a gas station with my dad, and they'd have comics there. So I bought things like, you know, Spawn, and even ironically enough, they even had like a Kiss comic. I don't know if you've ever seen or read that before. Yeah, like Ace Frehley is like a galactic superhero or something, and
gosh, yeah, and man.
I don't even remember what the other three members were, but that's the one that sticks out to me the most. Like I couldn't even tell you how many times I've actually read through that. It was so enjoyable, even as a small child. Like Kiss was so enjoyable.
Man, that's funny to think of stuff like that, because you consider, at least, I mean, like I think I've seen the Kiss comic, or if I haven't, then I've seen just, you know, musician comics or crossover comics. I mean, like Eminem having a crossover comic with Iron Man or Punisher. and like even The Weeknd having his own Starboy comic or whatever. You know, you've got weird stuff like that, but then you've got bands like Kiss and even technically Metalocalypse, right? I mean, that show, but yeah, Kiss having its own comic is different because it's like they're expanding it into its own weird little universe, and it's not so much about the band as it is like this whole kind of bigger thing, this whole independent story.
Yeah, it's kind of weird how like it almost seems like you can take like almost anything in this world and kind of turn it into like a comic book series. Like they've even done that with Star Wars. Like they've expanded on the character of Darth Vader, and they've also expanded on the character of Darth Maul, and you got all these different like series of comics just based on like a specific character, and it really like fleshes them out, and you really see things from them like from a completely different perspective.
Oh yeah, and like solo series, solo as in like when it's just like about a specific hero or character or whatever. But like solo series for me are like such a it's such a big risk to me because a lot of the time, at least, especially for Marvel and DC, not DC, but like some solo series that are done today, like when a new Black Widow series will come, or maybe like a new Taskmaster series or a Killmonger series, right? They're just kind of like riding the wave of like a character being popular, and it's got like a very 50-50 chance to me of like it being like an actual good comic versus it being it just being a cheap marketing thing. But with Disney buying Star Wars, I like all the solo series that they do for these different Star Wars characters because you had a lot of like the extended universe, the expanded universe, like books and media, like kind of tossed out as non-canon, right? So expanding and filling a lot more of these characters' backstories without having to create more movies. Like I think it really helps and gives people a lot more investment. And
because like even especially with like Vader, like he's such like a huge like fan favorite. Like it's cool to see like his troubles and stuff that we don't get to see like on the film and stuff. Things people want to see in like figuratively say a Disney Plus TV show if we ever do get one. But like Vader's like one of my top 5 like favorite characters in the entire series. So like I'm working on reading them. There were a bunch of free ones on like Amazon Kindle, so I took a chance and I grabbed a good chunk of them, and I'm gonna finally start reading them because they're highly regarded as like at least Star Wars comic wise, it's like some of the top ones to read.
And which ones are these again?
That's the very first wave of the Vader comics. I think there's like there's like 3 different waves. There's like this Vader series. There's Vader Down. Now they have a new one where it takes place between episode 4 and episode 5.
Yeah, and that's not interesting. It is, but I mean that's awesome that you've just got so much media coming out. Like because prior to that, like Dark Horse Comics, right? They owned the right to the Star Wars comics. But so they were making them. But then you get a powerhouse like Disney and Marvel behind it, and you just have so many more comics coming out, and it can be a little bit overwhelming. I mean, especially now that comics are pretty popular and comic book movies mainly. But yeah, at the same time, it does allow a lot of these characters to be fleshed out more, especially for characters like Darth Vader, who, I mean, okay, that's my thing, right? I guess like tying back like Star Wars to MCU is I loved the MCU Thanos, but like Thanos isn't traditionally like a sympathetic villain. He's literally the Mad Titan. He wants to marry and court Lady Death, so that's why he kills so many people. And that the reason why I bring that up is because Darth Vader to me is a great example of like a sympathetic villain. I mean, you just go into his past. He's got a legitimate tragic backstory. He's got conflicting emotions. I mean, that's like a good example to me then.
I guess would you say right now with like how like huge comic book movies are, do you think it's what's kind of like in a weird way like resurrecting the comic books? Because it kind of seemed like for a little while comic books were a little bit on like the slower side of things.
Oh yeah, and no, that's a great point. I mean, I need to like review it because I need to review it again because there were some like numbers I was like looking up where it was like talking about how physical comic sales have definitely gone down a little bit, but at the same time, like as stuff transitions more towards digital media, you get to see stuff like, these like these like Marvel Unlimited, right? Or DC Unlimited or whatever they call it. Like, and like you said, Kindle and Prime libraries where you can just read like these huge backlogs of things. So I would say that, yeah, with the popularity of these movies, like it definitely is, especially because a lot of people, like there are so many comic properties, like IPs that have been bought before movies even gotten made. So that has definitely helped to drive sales and to help with like publicity. When you have someone like Sony buy the rights to make a movie, buy the movie rights for a comic that's still being published, then they're also going to help market it, hopefully on the chance that they actually do end up making that movie.
Mm-hmm. Like the cool thing too is like even like with comic books, they've even like expanded them into a lot of different things. Like we kind of brought up earlier, you brought up The Walking Dead. Like it brought out the video game series, the Telltale series for gaming systems, and I've played through all of them. Like they're all amazing. Even to like the recent Spider-Man video game that came out here late 2018, which phenomenal game. If you haven't played it, highly suggest you do. And even that same year, actually, Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse came out. That was another awesome, really good comic book related movie.
Man, that one, I mean, once again, I'm already biased because Spider-Man's my favorite hero, but I was legitimately blown away by how much, how good the story was, how good the characters were, and just the legitimate care that went into that movie. I mean, like different animation styles. You had even different frame, the frame rates were offset just to make it seem more like a comic book. Seem like the motion was jumping a little bit more. You had just all these Easter eggs. I mean, like it wasn't just like a superhero movie, comic book movie, like cartoon movie. It was like a legitimate, like just labor of love, like watching Into the Spider-Verse.
Yeah, and like even like I said, it literally looks like a comic book, like come to life.
Yeah. I mean, that's even apparent when you look at the different Spider-Man, right? I mean, just the fact that they do adhere to their own individual like comic book art styles. I mean, like Penny Parker is based off of manga. You have Spider-Ham, who's based on just those like these old Looney Tune cartoons, and then of course you've got Nicholas Cage, Spider Noir, and you've just got, man. I mean, it was just so amazing to see like how far they could like push a superhero movie. Yeah, especially because I think it like smoked. I think that would be my favorite Spider-Man movie. I mean, it feel like it just outclassed every other Spider-Man movie before it because it just like was so ambitious.
Yeah, like even like the unique take on like the villains, like especially like Kingpin and even especially Green Goblin. I mean, Green Goblin's like this big hulking monster looking like thing, and they had what for villains? They had the Prowler, Kingpin, Green Goblin, Scorpion.
Oh gosh.
I feel like there's one more in there somewhere.
Yeah, I know. I'm losing track. Oh yeah, Doc Ock.
Oh yeah, there you go. Yeah, Octavia
and
whatever her name is.
I think Hammerhead was in there too.
It was either Hammerhead or it was Tombstone. It was one or the other.
My bad. Tombstone. Yep.
Yeah. I always get those two mixed around too.
Yeah, no, that was it. Tombstone.
But like even too, like I brought up the Spider-Man PS4 video game, like that even actually goes into like quite a bit of attention to detail in there. Like it even pays tribute to a lot of different like Spider-Men essentially, and like bringing in all sorts of different costumes from other universes and even movies, and even TV shows.
Yeah, and man, and then you get I actually it came out in 2018, right? And I gotta admit, I don't think I played it until last year. Yeah, like I think middle of last year because I was admittedly like waiting for it to go on sale, and it finally like dropped down to 25 or like around 20-30 bucks, and like that included the DLC. So I just played through, like beat it in like about a week, and it was incredible.
I loved it. I'll be brutally honest. That's right now, that version of Spider-Man is my favorite Spider-Man. I even like too how like even talking about Spider-Man and talking about the Spider-Man video game, they've actually made a comic book regarding that Spider-Man being like a huge role in it.
Mm. Yeah, you mean the the Spider-Man video game comic, or?
Well, they got the Spider-Man video game comic, and then I believe they just came. I think it's called Spider Wars. I think it's called. Like it's got all the Spider-Men like together and stuff. And
Yeah, there's also so many Spider-Man comics. It's because I mean you had like the original Spider-Verse. Let's see, you had the original Spider-Verse, and you had Spider-Geddon. You had, I mean, Clone Saga was way back when. I mean, all that to say, right? You've got a bunch of different Spider-Men. So, and I mean, even during the Spider-Verse event comic, it was cool because you had characters like Spider-Gwen and Penny Parker introduced. Which, fun fact, Penny Parker was created by Gerard Way of My Chemical Romance. And
really?
Yeah, no, dude based it a lot off of that was a gripe I had about Into the Spider-Verse. I get, why they had to tone it down, but her character in the comic was a lot grittier because it was based off of Neon Genesis Evangelion. So it was based off of like some really like kind of dark anime mecha tones. They lightened that up a lot, but it was I know that comic is pretty cool because how they imagine like a bunch of different Spider-Man villains. Like either way, I kind of digress back to getting to see different versions of Spider-Man, but that also goes into Star Wars canon, like the established expanded universe and things like that. Is why I do enjoy getting to see different takes and spins on characters, whether that's Star Wars. Even Transformers, or DC and Marvel heroes.
Yeah, and there's like so many different like varieties and even like different Earths and stuff, figuratively, we could say. Because like obviously, of course, too, I guess I don't know how heavily influenced the comics are within like, the Arrowverse. I don't know if they're really loosely pinned in there or something.
Yeah, so that's also when the harsh reality of like how media rights work, because so you have Gotham, right? It's kind of weird because I'm trying to think how it works specifically, but it's like Warner Brothers owns DC, or at least has like a major deal with them. So that's why they make all the DC movies. It's kind of like vertical like that, but or encompassed. But then there's a couple. They don't have as many properties, as far as I know, kind of out in the wild as Marvel does. But one of the big things is I think Fox owns the right to make Batman like TV shows. Like they own the TV rights to Batman. So because of that, CW, WB can't use Batman as a main character in a series. Like they can like kind of passively reference to him and things like that. And you've got the workaround of them being able to like through a streaming service, they can make something like Titans, where he's a side character.
But he doesn't play a role in Batwoman at all, does he? Is he even like in Batwoman?
Not really. I mean, like I think they make like they make passive references to him, but at the same time, it's the same reason why you have Arrow playing such a critical role in the I guess the DC TV universe, right? Is because he pretty much and that's actually legitimately why Green Arrow was made in real life. So Green Arrow was made pretty much in case like Batman sales, if Batman sells comics dipped. So him being used as kind of this pseudo Batman for the CW DC universe is basically, art imitating life, whatever you want to call it.
I guess. Would you say that like the Arrowverse kind of did what the MCU did? Kind of took like little more. I guess I don't want to say like low budget characters, but like less popular characters to try to build up their universe.
Yeah, honestly, I'd say so, because I don't know too much about how all the specific media rights work, right? The licensing, because you still have like Superman, but you still have Superman like in Supergirl, like confirmed to be in that universe, and like a lot of bigger heroes referenced. You even have Martian Manhunter, and some of those characters were made really, really popular by like the Justice League animated series. But at the same time, yeah, it definitely feels like they're pushing characters like Supergirl and Batwoman, who, by the way, they have like incredible like comics, like a lot of these characters do. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, they're just not nearly as popular, of course, as Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, all these characters.
Yeah, because I mean, I thoroughly enjoy a majority of the Arrowverse. Like, it's really close between Arrow and Flash. Like, I like the villains. I kind of like some of the comic booky stuff they do, but at the same time, I mean, you can definitely tell it's like a drama, because it seems like a large number of times throughout the entirety of the show, you got like Barry and Cisco fighting, or Cisco right. fighting with somebody else. It's like, dude, come on.
And I mean, 9 times out of 10, I just thought about this, but like 9 times out of 10, a good way to like check, so to speak, how popular a character is like how readily you can like name a villain. Like if you can like name their arch nemesis, like for that hero, then that kind of is a giveaway of like how popular they are. Like case in point, who is like Cyborg's main enemy? And I'm gonna be honest, I couldn't answer that, because he kind of doesn't technically have one.
I was just gonna say, man, you got me there already.
Hey, me too. I backed myself into a corner.
I mean, you got, like, of course, obviously, Batman's got Joker, Superman's got Lex Luthor, Flash has Reverse Flash. I guess maybe who's actually like the real villain for the Green Arrow.
Ooh, for Green Arrow, that gets a little weird. I'm gonna say, because I want to say sometimes it's Count Vertigo, right? And you got to see him in the TV series, as well as he's animated in certain shows, like in the Batman animated series. When Green Arrow comes into play, Count Vertigo comes in. But wow, yeah, off the top of my head, I can't name a main villain for Green Arrow, because I don't actually recall how many like main villains I've seen that weren't adopted from other heroes. Case in point, Ra's al Ghul is, of course, what you're going to associate as a Batman villain, but was very, very, very critical and pivotal to the Green Arrow plot.
Well, even the same thing with like Deathstroke too. I mean, he actually played a pretty like significant role in there.
Yep, exactly. And he's traditionally going to be more associated with Batman as well. Batman and mainly the Teen Titans.
Mm-hmm. Oh man, the Teen Titans show from like the early 2000s.
Oh man, I get that some people enjoy Teen Titans Go, but I just can't get into it, because I just have such a soft spot for the original Teen Titans animated series.
Yeah, as soon as I heard they were doing a crossover between those two, I was like, man, just please don't do it, please.
Yeah, I haven't even circled around to watching it. I'm always so scared of whether those things are going to be. And I actually heard it was really good, but oh wait, no, I'm thinking I haven't heard anything about whether that's good or bad. I just remembered
the Teen Titans Go movie.
Right. Yeah, I just remembered that getting really good.
Yeah, and I mean, like even like good shows like that, like animated shows, like even the Batman animated series and Batman Beyond, and you brought up earlier the Justice League. Like those are some like really good, just high up there comic book shows. like I've got a soft spot for Batman Beyond. I've really enjoyed that little arc and series.
Oh yeah, and and Batman Beyond. I mentioned this on my. Oh gosh, I think someone asked. Well, no, someone like posted one of those like little templates like about your favorite Batman's info or whatever, and yeah, the Batman Beyond costume is my favorite Batman costume or bat suit, and like more specifically in like the prototype Batman Beyond suits, I love even more just because they've got like little nuances, like they've got like they're a little clunkier or they have wings. I mean, actual wings rather than just kind of glider arms. It's really cool.
Yeah, it's definitely a unique take on Batman, especially taking place more in like the future.
Yeah, yeah, and also seeing the future of Gotham and the fact that, like, I mean, it's kind of like the Dark Knight or the Dark Knight Rises or the Dark Knight Returns, where Batman or Bruce Wayne has to admit that he just can't do it forever, like keep his war going.
Yeah, I mean, as hard as it is not seeing Bruce Wayne behind the cowl, I mean, heck, even Jim Gordon has been Batman.
Oh yeah, and that actually is probably my favorite Batman run is the Scott Snyder, Greg Capullo run, and yeah, no, I mean that one was because they did a lot of Scott Snyder does like a lot of horror writing or like horror short stories and like a couple novels and all that. Mm-hmm. So he really incorporated that into a lot of his writing style when he was writing Batman, which made stuff like the Joker more terrifying. They created the Court of Owls. I mean, there was just so much going on there that made it for me.
So we've actually talked pretty heavily here about, like the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Right.
What's your take on the DCEU?
I tell people this, like, unironically, I actually like Man of Steel. And part of that is because Marvel started to be really like, I liked the idea of reinventing Superman's origin a little bit because that's like, when you make a movie to an extent, like when you make a movie like that to an extent, you should have the liberty to reinvent this character. It doesn't have to be page to screen because that's what like helped the MCU stand out so much is they took reference from the comics and then once they kind of caught their stride, they started to differentiate themselves from the comic books a lot more.
Yeah.
So that's why I liked Man of Steel. And I felt that it set this like kind of foundation for a darker DC universe, but that had that hope, right? That Superman in it, that he was like evolving into that symbol of hope. And it was nice. But then I feel like they kind of knee-jerk reacted too quick when they made Batman versus Superman. And that's where the true downfall of the DCEU happened.
Yeah, they should have gave every single person like their own. I don't want to say like their own origin movie, but their own like standalone films before we got Justice League kind of build up these characters instead of just throwing them all in a movie.
Right, and like with Batman versus Superman, I have no problem with Wonder Woman being introduced. Like that was a good idea because she's part of that quote unquote Trinity. Wonder Woman, Batman, Superman, like. They're DC's Trinity, and introducing her like out of nowhere, so to speak, like was a nice unexpected surprise, or at least it would have been if they had, I don't know, just made things a little bit cleaner, a lot cleaner.
And see, I have an unpopular opinion. It's not just because I don't like the actual like character itself, but like Man of Steel's on like the bottom of my listing for like the DC movies. I'm sorry, man. I am not a Superman fan. Like I actually think Superman personally is the most overrated character in the entire comic book series of everything.
And that's the thing is I used to be very not like anti-Superman, but like I would very much like roll my eyes when people would tell me he's their favorite character. But that's kind of the nice part about like reading a lot of comics and exploring them is you learn like that Superman and Spider-Man have this kind of interesting kind of shared similarity, which is that a huge like part of them isn't their power, but is their ability to control themselves and their morality. Mm-hmm. And I mean, because a lot of times, like, people don't like realize this. It's mentioned pretty explicitly too. But like, Spider-Man is holding back, like, pretty much every fight that he's in. He's holding back. I mean, obviously Superman is, but a lot of people don't realize how strong Spider-Man is. I mean, during his debut, one of the things was that he was able to lift each one of the main DC characters above his head. I mean, Hulk, Thor. Let's see, Hulk, Thor, Captain America. I think the Fantastic Four as well. He's able to like lift them on a platform above his head. It just as like a little comic side note, but still, it's like he's the kind of guy who has to pull his punches whenever he's hitting people. He has to make sure he pulls his head back when like criminals punch him so they don't break their jaw. I mean, break their hand trying to like punch him.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, in one instance, like where he just like gets mad at the Punisher, like just unrelenting, he makes the Punisher look like a child. I mean, just reacts so quick. And don't get me wrong, like Punisher absolutely capitalizes on the fact that Spider-Man won't take lethal action, but it did showcase that, yeah, like a huge part of like Spider-Man and Superman is their ability to hold back, restrain themselves, and how much better, especially characters like Superman, work as character studies, right? It's when you get into his personality and like who he is as a human, then that's where the best Superman stories come from.
Like this is gonna sound so weird, but I'm actually very interested in reading like, the Injustice version of Superman. Like where he just goes like just so out of control because like Joker kills Lois and
no, actually one thing I admittedly hate or frown upon, I guess, is I don't like tie-in comics. Like, for video games or movies. A lot of the time I'll like skip past them or blow past them.
Uh-huh.
But even apart from being a tie-in comic, like Injustice is incredibly well done just as a comic in general. Like incredibly well done.
Okay.
So
I guess my next question, if there's like people who are like wanting to get into comics, like they've never picked up any kind of version of it, what would be like your suggested comics for people to read to kind of get them going?
Man, that's actually a harder question than like that's actually a harder question. Maybe it's just I overthink it. But that's a harder question than like I think a lot of people think it is in some cases. Once again, I overthink a lot of things. But for me, it like really depends on a person's personality, right? Or what kind of movies they watch, what kind of music they listen to, like I mean things like that, or even like what hobbies they have, because I could I mean, there are like manga, right? There are manga and comics about rock climbing. Like I've got several biographical comics on my bookshelf, like even about the history of Tetris and one about Andre the Giant, both by the same author, Box Brown. And I've even got a beautiful Beatles comic, The Fifth Beatle, about Brian Epstein, the Beatles manager. And I mean, like biographical comics aren't my main thing, but I say that because I definitely overthink it a lot. And so honestly, that's a harder question for me to answer. But if I did just have to give some random suggestions, I'd probably lean into my own personal, like, my own kind of personal preferences for comics, right? So I'd probably recommend reading, like starting with the original Spider-Man, like just maybe reading a couple issues of when Peter Parker actually becomes Spider-Man, Stan Lee, because then you have like a much simpler story structure, good, clean art. It's nice. If someone's trying to get into the Avengers, I'd recommend John Hickman's recent, like came out like dang near half a decade ago, but John Hickman's Avengers run, just because that's where you get into a little bit of interesting Marvel cosmic universe. I'm trying to think what else. There's so many different directions you could go, and I mean, of course, a really good one too is Superman for All Seasons, where you just have, once again, this deconstruction of Superman, or this just look into his life as Clark Kent and how he responds to different seasons of life, each mirroring like fall, winter, summer, spring. Oh, another good one is All-Star Superman. And that's where you get to see Superman is Superman gets his powers from the sun, right? And he becomes so irradiated by the sun that he's super powerful, but he's dying from pretty much a form of Kryptonian cancer. And yeah, that's a good one because you see Superman at his most powerful, but you also have to see him, at his most vulnerable. And those are just Superman. Those are just Superman comics. I know I'm trying to I would recommend Watchmen. I definitely want to, but that's also a very gritty comic. I mean, if you're into that kind of media already, like if you watch stuff like Sicario or Death Note or even read, if there are things like that, then yeah, I would immediately recommend Watchmen because it deconstructs superheroes and it's kind of like a way, way, way more serious version of The Boys.
Yeah, I just watched the Watchmen film for the first time here about a year or so ago, and I don't know. I have very mixed feelings. It makes me interested to read it, but at the same time, it was just kind of odd for me.
Yeah. No, and it's funny thinking that's Zack Snyder, right? Same guy who was helming the DCEU and did 300. And and 300 is based on a comic too. It's so weird how many random movies are based on comics. But yeah, that was one of those things where Watchmen, I really liked Watchmen as a comic movie, but it was also one of those movies that was, like we were talking about earlier, it was page to screen. Some of the single set pieces that they have, just frames, are literally right out of the comics. And they change a few things, but a lot of it is there's so few things changed about it. It's pretty much just the comic adapted straight to a movie.
That's actually kind of interesting.
But yeah.
So we've talked pretty in depth about actual, comics and comic book movies. So let's take a little bit of a left turn here. How about we talk a little bit about mangas and anime? Kind of how they differentiate from one another, I guess we could say, because there's definitely a lot of things that they don't put on the screen. You and I, we were talking pretty heavily about Death Note before we started this podcast, and
yep.
I think it's 7 issues or something like that, or there's 6 or 7 books before the one shots.
Yeah, I'm trying to think how many there are. There's, for Death Note, it's I think that there's, because there's about 37 episodes or whatever the anime was, but 12. It's about 12. It's 12 volumes of the manga, but they collect them, into bigger books. So it's 6. So yeah, that's where it gets confusing, right? Is how they collect them.
Yeah, but there's just, I haven't read through all of them. I've kind of skimmed through them just to kind of see how it compared. Like we keep talking about, page to screen and stuff like that. But there's such a huge gap that they don't put in.
Yeah. Yeah, and sometimes that's this is actually funny because it ties into Watchmen a little bit. So Alan Moore, the guy who wrote Watchmen and has wrote Watchmen and V for Vendetta, and wrote Watchmen, V for Vendetta, League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. Just huge impact in the comic book community and industry. But that dude hates anything, he hates his works getting adapted into movies or TV shows. And he hates it because he believes that, the whole point of putting something into the graphic novel medium is for it to be a graphic novel. If he wanted to create or write a TV show, he would just do that. And that's kind of the realistic truth about when you write something to be a graphic novel, write or illustrate, then yeah, there is presumably going to be some stuff that doesn't translate well to screen just because it was never really intended to.
Yeah, I mean, you can definitely tell like the amount of work and like the attention to detail and stuff. Like in a weird way, it's like they are making their own movie, but it's actually like just pen to paper essentially.
Yeah, and I mean, especially because for so there's a couple cases of, I mean, especially when you have, well, I'm trying to think of the best way to put this. Like American and Western comics, especially for like superheroes, are unique and interesting in that like they can change creative teams like a lot of the time. Like Stan Lee didn't write Spider-Man forever. I mean, Spider-Man's had, like any superhero has had so many creative teams or popular superheroes. But for manga, like for manga, like 99.999% of times, like series will be written start to finish by the same creative team, whether that's like one dude drawing and writing, or the same, like drawing and writing, or that's an illustrator and a writer working together. But because of that, because it's like one person writing the same thing, you'll legitimately notice things start to shift over time. Like art styles will change or become more refined, especially when it's like going on for years, or even like writing, narrative, and tone will change. Like One Piece has been going on forever, and like you've not only seen differences in like the art, but I mean, like the creator even said like he planned it on ending it sooner, but it just felt like he had more story to tell.
Yeah, that's like the big things about like mangas. Like some you can definitely tell have like, gone past like, their prime. And then you got some that are like slowly just building into like better and better things. Don't get me wrong, I was very happy with the Death Note anime, and even like Dragon Ball Z. I know sometimes it kind of differs, and even sometimes you have people who make films or shows, and then eventually they come out later on with like a book or a comic about it or something like that.
Yeah, no, that crossover. Yeah, that does, like, Star Wars is the same way, or any like huge property is going to be, or IP is going to be the same way, in that it gets either like tie-ins, like crossover media, or tie-ins, guest appearances, all of these things. Like when they were, case in point, like when they were writing Infinity Gauntlet, back in the, yeah, when they were writing Infinity Gauntlet, you didn't have like streaming, you didn't have you didn't have Zoom or anything. So these artists and all these like writers and all this would literally be like in the same hotel, or if not the same like hotel room, just like writing up storms and drawing and trying to like turn around issues like nothing else. And yeah, it's interesting to see how the industry changes and evolves, but also how like creators how creators evolve.
So I guess now when it comes to, since we've again talked about it pretty heavily here, what is your take on Americanized anime or manga?
Oh man, that is such a slippery slope.
Yeah, because I know you and I we talked about
The Death Note movie and
that, and Dragon Ball Evolution, and I'm sure there's more out there. I haven't quite discovered them yet.
yeah, it's, well, a lot of like manga like embraces absurdism like a lot more, right? Like it gets pretty goofy and weird. I mean, it can even be grounded, right? But at the same time, so like some of it, and especially the more popular stuff, is very unique, distinctive, and even like relies really heavily, not even in a bad way, right? But really heavily on Japanese cultural elements. Like idol culture being like idols being a very big thing. Boy bands and idol groups like still being big. The emphasis that's placed on high school and college exams, all these things that just don't translate over to American culture. Even though, like in Western culture, you have a lot more things that might translate over to Japanese culture, right? A lot easier. So it feels like to me it's easier for Japanese, like Japanese creative teams to adapt like Western like Western things. I mean, you even have a live action Spider-Man TV show where he's got a giant robot. and it seems like that shockingly works a lot better than like America trying to adapt. Case in point, Death Note or Ghost in the Shell, things like that to TV.
Yeah, because they definitely seem to, I guess, in my way of seeing it, like very water it down.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, even I'm trying to remember Old Boy. If you've heard of Old Boy, let's see, it's a Korean film. Let's see, about I mean, obviously not going to go too far into it, right? But it's a Korean film about this guy who just gets locked in a box for, I mean, years until he's released, and then he just goes on a bender, like, I mean, trying to find his captors, right? They take his daughter away, and he's just on a rampage. And that's interesting because of the fact that that movie, the original Korean film, is based off of a Japanese manga. But because, it's Korea to Japan, they have like pretty similar cultural elements, so it shifts a lot better. But then, like, I think with like there was an American remake or an American adaptation of Old Boy with Josh Brolin and Elizabeth Olsen.
Really?
Yeah. I watched it, and like I actually enjoyed it more than I thought I would. But man, Old Boy is weird. So yeah, Old Boy is just a weird film, let alone manga. And there are even like certain cultural elements that like play heavily into the plot. So whenever the main character is like stuck in this cell, right, he is fed dumplings like every day. But here's the thing, like in America, like you go to most like Asian restaurants, right? Or Chinese, Japanese, like any sort of like Oriental or Asian restaurant, if you will, or market. And the presentation in some cases, because it's Americanized, like might not be as big of a deal, right? It might just be the same kind of generic dumpling. Maybe it's seasoned differently or food item. But in Korea and Japan, it's pretty interesting because the appearance of the dumpling might be a big deal. Like, a shop might signify themselves on like what their dumplings look like in a lot of cases. So in the Korean version, in order to start tracking down the guys who took him hostage, he starts just going to different restaurants, like, and he'll like look at the dumplings to like see who makes what kind of dumplings and if they're the same as the ones that he was fed every day. But in the American version, he goes, Josh Brolin's character goes from store to store, orders dumplings, and he'll eat them to see if they taste the same. Which, once again, it's not like a big deal, but there's just such minute details like that it's just when you get to like bigger things, like you see in the Death Note, like in the Death Note live action movie versus the TV show, it makes like a lot more sense why it's hard to Americanize manga and Japanese like stories.
Especially too, like when they change like some of like the most important parts of it and don't even like involve them even sometimes. Like I guess have you seen, I'm assuming you've seen the Death Note show or the movie?
Oh yeah. I will admit this fully. I have not seen the movie. I tried to avoid it like the play. Read the manga, watched the show. I refuse. I mean, I'll make it happen eventually, but like I just have not watched the movie because I'm like kind of afraid of being that disappointed.
All I would say is, first of all, you're making a very good choice because I've somehow made it through the movie twice. I showed my buddy it because I introduced him to Death Note because he wanted me to watch Attack on Titan. And
oh, nice. Yeah, that's another good one.
Yeah, and he got into Death Note, and then I told him that there was a movie. So I'm like, okay, hey, let's sit down and watch it. And he just looked at me afterwards and just laughed. And he's like, what did you just make me watch? I'm like, dude, this was my second time seeing it, and I still don't even know what I watched yet.
Yeah, I mean, but exactly, because man, it even because even I forget all the different characters' names, right? But even with, well, I mean, like in the context of the movie, because they changed a lot of them, westernized. But even that's important because of the fact that like certain characters' names like have specific meanings, not just because of the fact that like, Light Yagami is the main character's name in the manga, but the fact that like the characters they use to spell certain names, like, characters handwrite, like characters they use in like the Japanese language to spell names in a lot of cases like make a huge difference, especially when you're using the Death Note. It's important to note that like because certain people spell their names with different characters, if you don't use the right character in their name, like in Japan, then you might not kill that person because of the fact that even though you know their name and their face, you can't spell their name correctly.
Yeah. And even too, I guess I don't know if it's a actual manga, but I just watched a movie here about like a month and a half. I keep praising it. I keep telling everybody to watch it, but it's called Train to Busan.
Oh yeah. Oh, nice. Yeah.
But I had a guy on here during one of my podcasts, and we talked beforehand, like I always do. And he told me that just the way like that film plays out, it's based off an anime called Cabin. How does he say here? Cabaneri of the Iron Fortress.
Wow.
Apparently it's
I did not know that.
Yeah, apparently it's like very similar. Like people are like stuck on this train or something, and there's zombies everywhere trying to kill them, and I'm very interested. I'm gonna try and look this up, and I'm gonna try and watch it because man, I've seen the film like 3 or 4 times here in the last like month and a half, and it's a good foreign film.
Actually, I will admittedly. So I will give you this. All right, because you were talking about America, like kind of a Americanization or Westernization of like manga and like anime, like that failing. Because I'm legitimately trying to think of an example where like it worked, and I can't immediately think of anything. I'm sure there's like a couple or more than I'd think, right? But on the opposite end of that spectrum, like a huge one, like that's like almost hysterical to me, is oh gosh, I just forgot. Snowpiercer.
Oh, yep.
Yeah, Snowpiercer is based off a I think it's French. Yeah, French graphic novel, and it was adapted into a Korean film. Well, that's the thing. It was like a Korean movie, but like mainly like American cast. Chris Evans was in it. I mean, that's insane to me that you could adapt a movie that well. You lose some of the tone, but like you lose some of the tone in like motifs or themes or whatever. But at the same time, I mean, it was still just a good movie.
Yeah, I watched that too for the first time last year, and yeah, I was so impressed with like how just amazingly like detailed it is too. Like the amount of work that these guys put into making these films and stuff, it's insane.
Yeah. I mean, and to be fair, it is Bong Joon-ho who either way, who directed it, who also did Parasite. So yeah, he's just a good director. But
I believe he actually did Train to Busan too.
Oh, well, dang. Then the man's just wow.
This man needs an award like immediately.
Oh yeah, and I'm glad he got it. I'm glad he got it for Parasite, right? Because he did like Parasite, The Host, and I guess that one on Netflix, Okja. I'm not sure how to pronounce it, but
yeah, I think it's something like that.
But then, hey, then you've also got like a Snowpiercer and Parasite TV series like coming out. So, but those ones are also, I feel like those ones might be well constructed enough that they can. Okay, well, actually, if a Snowpiercer TV series like fails, there's no excuse for that. I mean, like once again, it's like it's a Western comic that kind of translates pretty easily. But yeah, but Parasite, I could see easily translating over to a Western audience, but especially since the Korean movie did so well and had like pretty universal themes. But you never know.
Yeah, I mean, anything in this world is possible.
Yep. I think that's part of why I'm really surprised that Ghost in the Shell wasn't better, like the Ghost in the Shell movie.
Oh, the one with Scarlett Johansson?
Right. Yeah.
See, I haven't seen that yet. My buddy, he swears up and down of the actual original Ghost in the Shell, so I watched that with him, and
Yep.
I will willingly say, I mean, I fell asleep quite a bit because it was pretty late at night, but I tried watching it again. It's not bad. Like, for something I've never seen and experienced before, it's actually a pretty enjoyable time.
Yeah, and like I enjoy the original Ghost in the Shell movie. I still haven't read the manga, but like I enjoy the original Ghost in the Shell. I think it did a lot for the cyberpunk genre. But at this, and I use that to highlight the fact that like I mean, cyberpunk like came, as far as I know, like a little bit more out of Western culture, right? Mm-hmm. So for things like Ghost in the Shell and Akira to capture a lot of that post-apocalyptic and cyberpunk like genres, I bet, and for us not to be able to translate that over to a Western movie is kind of surprising to me.
Oh yeah, it's some things they can do very well. Other things definitely should not be, Americanized, I guess we could say. Because even like you watch like certain animes and they like when they do like the English dubs, like half the times it doesn't even like match what they're saying or anything.
Right. No, absolutely. And I mean, part of that is like, I'll give them a little grace there because there are some things that don't translate well, or they're doing their best to like try and sync up, American or English audio to what the character's mouth movements. But but still, there are cases where that still seems to miss the point, especially when you have like, I guess G Kids or whatever, like edits case like Dragon Ball Z when it came out, like Dragon Ball had a little bit more nudity and a lot more violence.
Yep, I still remember one of the original episodes of Dragon Ball where Goku takes off Bulma's panties.
Yeah, no, stuff like that is oh my gosh, stuff like that, looking back on it and being like, okay, maybe the version we got wasn't too bad of a, like maybe I shouldn't be complaining too much about the version we got.
Yeah, especially when you like go back and you actually watch like the you actually go and watch like the Japanese version and you watch how that's done, and then you watch like the English dub and it's like, whoa.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm watching two completely different things here.
Yeah, right. And actually that does make me think of like in terms of adaptations, stuff like Naruto. Like I bring up Naruto because it's interesting. I was like reading some of the creators, and man, this quarantine has not been good for me. I was joking with a friend, half joking, that I've like learned more about Naruto in the past like 3 weeks than I have in like the past 20 years of my life. And man. yeah, no man. But I was reading some notes on like his characters is, and he's talking about how the main character Naruto, when he created him, blonde hair, blue eyes, he imagines like Naruto being like American, like by ethnicity, so to speak, Caucasian American, I guess. And Sakura, chick with pink hair, for her to be European by descent. And then for Sasuke, emo red-eye dude, to be Japanese or Asian by descent. So that's interesting to me because of the fact that, by the creator's interpretation and intention, he's literally got these guys kind of mapped out for like being multicultural.
See, that's also an anime I've never actually watched.
Really? Not even like an episode? It's like
no, I haven't seen that. I haven't seen One Piece. I haven't seen One Punch Man. Man, there's so many animes I haven't seen, and that's the same reaction I get. They're like, you said what now? Like,
yeah, but I mean,
I haven't seen it yet.
But I mean, actually, so that's an interesting point right there, right? Is anime like One Punch Man and My Hero Academia, is the fact that those both adapt like huge elements of Western culture, like the superhero genre, and do it incredibly well.
Mm-hmm.
Or even better yet is like Cowboy Bebop. Like, I mean, the fact that like it's taken so long to make a good just a Cowboy Bebop movie, I understand that it's like the budget would be insane on it, but I mean, Cowboy Bebop, for all intents and purposes, like is just like feels like a Western show for the most part. I mean, just it was obviously inspired by a lot of those elements, but
Yeah, that's one of the first ever adult shows I ever watched in my life, and what an experience!
Yeah, no kidding. But
Yeah.
yeah, seriously, no kidding. I was telling you earlier, I had a former student of mine like watch it, and he just loved it. And it's I'm glad that that was like one of his first experiences with anime because man, you dive into the deep end on that too quickly, and you can get like burned real fast.
Yeah, because even a manga or even like a anime TV series, whatever, that's like completely different from what we actually see on screen compared to on the page is Yu-Gi-Oh.
Oh yeah, no, that's a
Yu-Gi-Oh, the first like couple of issues are so dark. It's
no,
almost like terrifying to look
well,
at.
not just that, but something that like occurred to me is like, yeah, exactly what you're saying is so like I guess like in the comic you die. Like I mean, if you lose the game, you die, and like that's it.
Yep.
But then in the like, and I mean, they were showing kids this. Like, I was waking up on Saturday morning and watching this at like 11 years old. Like, I was watching a show on WB where apparently, rather than dying, when people lose their life points, they get stuck in the shadow realm, which is, I guess, limbo for all intents. Like, so rather than like just dying, their souls are stuck for eternity in like a realm where they have no human contact. So, I mean,
Yep.
like that was better. Like that, it was someone decided that was better than like just dying or like something, anything else.
Yeah, because like in the manga, I guess I don't know how well you know the characters, but there's a character called Bandit Keith, and he's
Yeah.
his big thing is cheating to win. Well, after he loses, he goes up to I think it's Pegasus, I want to say, but he like goes up to Pegasus and he's like threatening him with a gun. He ends up losing his gun, and magically, like his hand turns into a gun, and he just like he blows his brains out. It's like,
right, yeah, it's
and then you go and you watch like the TV show from WB, and it looks like he's supposed to be holding a gun in the Japanese version, but they censored out the gun, so it looks like he's just pointing at him, and then he just goes through a trapdoor and falls into the ocean. Like, wow, like that is the straight up definition of Americanizing something for kids, which don't get me wrong, very smart idea, because I don't think you want to be like, oh yeah, you lost the game, so yeah, you're dead. Like,
yeah, no,
okay.
And yeah, I mean, and that's another thing is that in like in the West, like in America, a lot of anime is, I mean, not a lot of anime, but like animation for the most part has traditionally been associated with like children or younger audiences, whereas in Japan, like for a while, it's been associated as like being all age ranges, which is why you have literally like literal terms for the demographics for anime, like shonen and seinen and shoujo and josei or whatnot. I mean, like for different like age ranges, like age range and gender and all that. And I mean, obviously, you've got that here. You can say like this is targeted towards teens or whatnot, but it blurs the line. Like I think technically, Death Note is like a shonen, right? Like for like guys like from like 12 to 18, which I mean, come on.
I mean, there's even some like really dark stuff in there, like the episode with what's her name, Naomi.
Yeah.
After he writes her name, and yeah, she like climbs up those stairs going towards that noose. It's like, whoa, like this took a heavy right turn.
Yeah, I rewatched that one actually a couple weeks back, and I was like, oh yeah, right. I forgot a show called Death Note was tragically dark.
Yeah, wow. It's just crazy how like even some things from like page to paper are even like that dark. Like, kind of makes me question some people, but at the same time, man, it's like it's pure entertainment.
Yeah, no, and I think that's what's also cool about Death Note is that and like that's another huge difference between like the movie, or my understanding of the movie, right, and what they try to do, is that Light's character is a kind of portrayed to be a lot more sympathetic, I guess, in the American movie, whereas, and maybe that's kind of like Breaking Bad, where, as a weird comparison, is like in Breaking Bad, you see Walter White kind of descend into madness, or you see him grow into Heisenberg.
Mm-hmm.
But in Death Note, like he's Kira, Light's Kira from start to finish. Like he doesn't change. He doesn't like get more evil or less evil. He doesn't like betray any of his like moral codes. It's like he's just that's what he always was.
Yeah, even when he like gives up his rights to the Death Note, and he's just basically just Light again. Like he doesn't even know about the notebook. He doesn't know about any of that other kind of stuff, and it's just weird because like even that episode when he gets that Death Note back and like he's like everything is working to my advantage, and you're like, dude.
Yeah, no, exactly. Like, gosh, I mean and once again, that's like not the kind of stuff that you're gonna see a lot of the time in Western. I guess not just Western animation, right? But like just Western shows, like American shows.
Mm-hmm.
And I definitely get, like I said, with like the MCU, I love seeing alternate takes on characters. So I actually do like the idea of Westernizing manga and, I guess Eastern comics or what have you, like, adapting Western works. Like I love the idea of that because I like the notion of being able to see heroes and stories through like different perspectives. But at the same time, it feels like when it is trying to, like, if they try to do it, like especially in Western culture or in American movies, that it feels like it's like lukewarm water. Like they kind of want to pay homage to the original work, but they also kind of want to make it palatable for an American audience.
Yeah, I can definitely see that when it comes to certain things.
Yeah. But yeah, I don't know, man. I guess I know you. I know that's a really good train of thought. I guess what do you feel about it overall? I guess just Western attempts at manga and anime adaptations.
For me, I think the only way it would really work a lot better is if it's maybe something that people maybe aren't as familiar with to kind of take an advantage of. Like, of course, so many people know, like what Dragon Ball Z is. So many people know what, Death Note is, Inuyasha, all like the big animes. Maybe if you got like a smaller anime and you kind of just tried to maybe not fully Americanize it, like kind of like keep the story how it's supposed to go, but keep it pure to like what it originally stood for. Because like watching the original Dragon Ball, you didn't see, Goku going to high school, getting attacked by a bully, having a crush on a girl. Like,
yeah,
that is not Dragon Ball. Like,
mm-hmm.
I need to see Goku with a tail as a kid searching for Dragon Balls with a power pole riding a little yellow cloud all around.
Right. Or, I mean, you even have stuff like, how familiar are you with Full Metal Alchemist or Berserk?
I've heard of Berserk. I've slightly dabbled in Full Metal Alchemist. That's more like my brother's realm. He's a huge anime fan. Nice. So there's so many animes he suggests for me to watch all the time.
Yeah, my brother's he's going to school for actually graphic design and digital animation. And man, like I always think I like comics and animation, but I mean I'm more on the comics side, but like on the animation side, that like he just will break down stuff. I mean, like I forget, they're like the Japanese term for interstitial animation and all that. Oh, hey, we've got a
We got our first question from Falcon B. What are your guys' favorite Star Wars comic books?
All right. You want to go first?
Yeah, actually, one of my favorite comics about Star Wars is actually the very first Grievous comic book. It involves a man. It's been so long since I've read it, but I remember there being a Jedi in there. He kind of goes rogue. Mace Windu's in it, and it's essentially just Grievous kind of like stalking these guys, and they're kind of, it takes place during like the Clone Wars micro series. I don't know if you've ever watched that. They were like Samurai Jack style.
Yep, I was gonna say Gendy Tarakovsky or whatnot. Yeah, man.
Yeah, it takes place around then, like leading up to like Revenge of the Sith and stuff, and that one's my personal favorite.
Nice. Yeah, no, that's a good one because I feel like, I feel like in the prequel movies we got robbed of the awesome characters that should have been General Grievous and Darth Maul. Like they were very, like to me at least, right? They were very heavily like publicized, marketed, and then it felt like when they were in the movies, they were kind of one and done.
Yeah, especially Grievous, because like the 2003 Clone Wars show, he was made to be like this just
good night. Like he was actually legitimately like a little bit terrifying, like in that series, because like he's just 6 arms. He can use all of them like interchangeably as arms or feet. He's juggling lightsabers. I mean,
like the first episode he is in, it's basically like you're watching a horror movie, and then you watch him kill Shaggy from Scooby-Doo.
But I mean, for real, like that's what I wanted to see in the prequel movies.
Yeah, Grievous was definitely a letdown, especially now the way he's characterized in like the Clone Wars animated TV show. He's very, very watered down.
But let's see, Falcon B. To your point, what are your guys' favorite Star Wars comics? So I think I mentioned a little bit earlier that I haven't read nearly as many Star Wars comics as like a lot of people would think, just because Star Wars isn't like my bread and butter in terms of like sci-fi. I'm kind of more of a Mass Effect guy. I mean, that's not even like in that kind of, that's not even on like Star Wars or Star Trek level. But either way, to answer your question, Star Wars Vader Down is probably the one that I've read the most and enjoyed the most. And that one's by Jason Aaron and Kieran Gillen. And Jason Aaron's like is pretty, is famous for, I mean, a bunch of comics, but mainly he created Female Thor and also wrote probably my favorite Thor story of all time, The God Butcher. And yeah, him and Kieran Gillen wrote Vader Down. And that one's incredible because similar to what you were saying about Darth Maul and General Grievous, it deconstructs the character of Darth Vader a lot more. It makes him a bit more of a sympathetic villain, like I was saying. At one point, actually, like probably one of the most incredible scenes in a comic I've seen, or character interactions, is Tarkin. Tarkin always kind of like, has his feud with Darth Vader, inferiority complex, whatever you want to say. And Tarkin pretty much just says like, I could kill you as soon as I wanted to, or like, if I like whatever. And Vader just says, you can certainly try. So Tarkin pretty much just sends every form of like just soldier weaponry, etc. at him. I mean, at pretty much just to pin and hunt Darth Vader down. And I think it gets down to the point where like Darth Vader's in a cave, they like corner him, and it's incredible. I think, long story short, like he has they managed to get his lightsaber away from him, and it's like, I think they reflect on it and say it's like the worst thing they could have done was taking his lightsaber, because then he just starts force choking and like taking out everyone. But the cool thing is that and sad part is like Tarkin mentions that like he's sending wave after wave of people and soldiers at Darth Vader. Like, he's taking all of it, like every form of pain. And he says the only time he thinks he heard Darth Vader like scream or like, like indicate he was in pain was when he sent the troopers in with flamethrowers.
Huh.
Yeah, exactly. That part kind of messed me up a little bit. I was like, oh, wow.
Yeah, that would definitely mess me up pretty good.
Yeah.
Oh, it looks like Falcon's got another question. Have you guys been watching the latest season of the Clone Wars on Disney Plus? And if so, what are your thoughts? So, very unpopular opinion. I'm actually not a big fan of the Clone Wars TV show. Granted, I am willingly going to say, after seeing all the clips from this new season, I am heavily invested. I am going to watch the new season, at least for sure. I'm going to try and give the show at least another try.
Mm-hmm.
But I can definitely say with this last season, man, this seriously could not have ended on a better note. Like, it is grade A, just perfect Star Wars entertainment.
So then I'll go ahead and be on the opposite end of the actually, not even the opposite end. I actually have not watched an episode. I have not watched Star Wars, the Clone Wars, just because I guess one, my go-to and my memory of it is not tainted, right? But like is always going to be overruled by the original Clone Wars like miniseries, by the guy who created Samurai Jack. Mm-hmm. But also because I honestly just don't watch like a lot of 3D animation. Whenever it comes to TV characters, I have to admit I don't really like the designs of the characters. I know that like that's gonna flare some people up, but like I don't like the designs of the characters in the show, and that's like honestly why I don't watch a lot of modern or recent DC animated movies. Yeah, I know that's it's not because of the 3D, like obviously like they're hand drawn, but it's because whenever growing up reading comics and manga, like art style is very huge to me. It's like very critical. So if I kind of don't resonate with a character design, or if I'm seeing it in motion and it just doesn't like sync up with me, then it kind of just like off puts it. Like in a lot of these DC animated movies, I think the main artist they use now is like Phil Barbosa. And same guy who did the character design and art for Young Justice. And he's got a cool art style, but the thing is, like, when they're adapting comics that have like different artists and artists who have like way different illustration styles than he does, then it kind of like, it kind of sours it for me because I was expecting to see what they could do.
I definitely agree with you on like the animation part, because like it's kind of actually slightly distracting at some points. But my biggest, I guess, two of them, even though I will say it's a lot better in this newer season, I guess we can say, is Ahsoka. She just reminds me a little too much of episode 2 Anakin, who is like by far my least favorite character in the entire franchise.
I think a lot of people would agree with that.
Yeah. But I hear she gets better after like the 4th season. She actually starts developing a lot more. She's not as like a snarky little child.
Actually, that is something. You just brought up an interesting point with Ahsoka, right? Because I think they confirmed that she's going to be in The Mandalorian, right?
Yeah, she's going to be in The Mandalorian. And actually, even to just announce today, the guy who played Jango Fett in Attack of the Clones, since, of course, we all know, like, the clones, and Boba Fett's a unmodified clone. But
right, yeah.
He is actually going to be portraying Boba Fett. So Boba Fett is also going to be in season 2 of The Mandalorian.
Man, they are... Dang.
They are going straight to it, man. They're not pulling any punches this next season.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing. Man.
Another unpopular opinion. I think Boba Fett's the most overrated Star Wars character. I know. I get that a lot. It's just for me. I see, like the intimidating look of him and like the way he does his things, but I just don't see how this guy can be a fan favorite when he gets beaten by a blind man with a stick on accident.
Yeah, you ain't gotta. Yeah, dang, that's a
Man.
okay. That's a fair argument.
Yeah, it's I don't know. If whatever your guys' opinion is on Star Wars, I say it all the time in my Star Wars podcast. Everybody's got their own opinions. Just like even like lists, everybody's lists are going to be different. Everybody has different tastes. Obviously, I would assume by your reaction, you're probably a Boba Fett fan.
It's more so I like the idea of the character. Like I definitely like. I agree with the merit of what you're saying. Like absolutely is, but I don't know. It's in a weird way. I've kind of got a different overrated character. But the thing is, like, they're not really. They're kind of just neutral, right? I was going to say my kind of main overrated character would be the Knights of Ren, or
yeah,
or maybe that's just like a letdown because it's funny. One of my roommates and like one of my like oldest best friends, dude's into like I'm not like I like sports, but I'm not like a sports guy. I say that because this is the dude who like is like the let's see. Hey Falcon, me too, dude. Like to see Boba Fett in Mandalorian. Heck yeah. Yeah, no, huge sports guy, right? I mean, runs our fantasy football league every year. I mean, literally, like during Corona, like early stage, he bought a football and picked it up from like Academy, like sporting store, like just to like toss it around and stuff. I say that because we were in our like group chat, right? We were just talking about something, and usually, of course, I'm gonna be the comic geek or bring something stupid up, and I mentioned something about Star Wars or like Kylo Ren or something, and then he just busts out into like dang near an essay about the backstory of like the Knights of Ren, and everyone just like starts flaming him like, hey dude, like where did that come from? Like why? And it's like, like the Knights of Ren like already had like a cool established backstory, and like there was such a awesome mystery, and they looked freaking dope. And then like they were just like these weird
there's just no execution to it.
Yeah, exactly.
Because like I watched these guys called Collider. They used to do a Jedi Council. And one of the guys worded it, now I'm never going to be able to unsee it, but there's that frame where in the movie, like, they're all standing on, like, that big cliff, and, like, the camera's just panning by them.
Mm-hmm.
The only thing I can see now is, like, a car commercial, like, oh, introducing the brand new Ford F-150 presented by the Knights of Ren. It's like...
But, I mean, that's the thing, is, like, I get it if they're supposed to be like silent and intimidating, but
they don't do nothing. All they do is like follow Chewbacca around. They capture Chewbacca, and then they go to Exegol and they get just completely destroyed by Kylo.
Although I will say probably one of the most awesome freaking scenes in the entire Skywalker saga was Rey using Force lightning.
Like that caught me by surprise. In all honesty, I know everybody had their leaks and everything, but yeah, I was like that. Like it caught me by surprise for a minute, and then all of a sudden she screamed Chewie, and I'm like, oh my god, that's right, Chewbacca was on there, and ended up not being on there.
It was more so like anything else, like if she brought the ship down, if she like compacted it, if like something like that happened, like that would have been like, oh whoa, that's crazy, she's really powerful. But I mean, Force lightning is like like that was a different level. I mean, like the theater I was in, like just everyone shut up. Like,
yeah, I mean, it's such an unpopular opinion, but I love The Rise of Skywalker. Like everything in there was like very well done. I liked the execution of everything. Like you said, the Force lightning was cool.
Mm-hmm.
The Knights of Ren, they were cool, but when you come to find out that they maybe have like a total of, I even looked online. Somebody even said, I think the entirety of the movie, they have like not even 2 minutes of screen time.
Yeah, and oh my gosh, wow, that's tragic.
Yeah, especially when they're built up so heavily in The Force Awakens.
Yeah,
You get to The Last Jedi, it's nothing, but you get like the Praetorian Guards, which don't get me wrong. It was a
yeah.
cool scene. It's probably one of the best scenes of the entire film.
Oh yeah, no, it's also dope.
And then you get to The Rise of Skywalker, and it's like, finally, the Knights of Ren are here.
Yeah,
They're just standing there. They're
all right.
coming around the corner.
And
Kylo killed them.
I'm gonna also give like I guess my hot take. I don't know because I don't keep my ear to the ground on too much like Star Wars stuff outside of like like maybe stuff like you or Sean are saying and like passive conversations. But best character in the in the new series in the new trilogy is Kylo Ren.
Oh yes, definitely.
Like him and Poe. Just him and Poe personally like pulled the series along for me. I mean, and it's not so much that I didn't like Rey. There was just so much. I felt like Rey and Finn had so much like untapped potential, and then Poe was a little bit more consistent for me, like in terms of a character.
For me, Kylo Ren in that entire trilogy of films is like the best well-rounded character, and he's actually the one who's got like the continuous arc where like nothing really changes.
Oh yeah, right. And that's the thing is like it's like nothing quote unquote changes because he bounces back and forth so much. It's like this true struggle over whether or not he can return to the light side, whether or not he's committing fully to the dark side. We see him kill his dad. I mean, it's legitimately like emotionally like I felt invested in like seeing what happened to him. It was just Adam Driver killed it.
Adam Driver, yeah, man. That was the Force Awakens was the first time I've ever seen Adam Driver like play anybody. So like I've never seen him before. So like that was my introduction. I'm like, okay. Because for me, two of the best scenes in the entire trilogy involving Kylo Ren. The first one, I mean, the scene with him and Luke on Crate when he's having that little conversation with him and he's trying to like fully commit to the dark side.
Yeah.
And honestly, everything that happens with him on the second Death Star with Rey, like when he goes and finds the Wayfinder, he crushes it. They start having their duel.
Yeah.
And then everything with Leia basically giving up her life. And then, he gets stabbed. She feels that Leia's gone. She goes and heals him. And, I wanted to take your hand. I wanted to take the hand of Ben Solo. And then he has like that realization. And
actually, no, you know what? My bad. Most disappointing. I mean, this is across all three trilogies. Gosh, I can't believe I'm saying this. Okay, fine. Most disappointing thing in all three like trilogies, like in the entire Skywalker saga for me was Kylo and Rey ending up together.
Yeah, their little kiss at the end.
Yeah, right. Like because it was just like no build up. It felt like Finn and Rey were kind of the thing at the beginning, and I don't know, or whether or not she was supposed to like, or whether or not there was supposed to be this like definitive like she doesn't need to have a romantic relationship. Like it just felt like it was all over the place.
Yeah, I'll be honest. In all honesty, like the kiss itself didn't bother me because it's like, they're kind of coming together since they're. Oh, what's the analogy Palpatine used? They're like an anomaly within the Force. So
the diode or dyad or
there you go, the dyad, a dyad in the Force. That's what it is. And then like they just kiss, but I think at the same time, obviously, of course, the whole reasoning behind the Rise of Skywalker was, fan service, which we did get a lot of. Like I was saying earlier, like even that other really good scene with Kylo is when he turns around, he hears, "Hey, kid." And he's having that conversation with Han again, like how he wanted it to go, but he knew he had to do what he did in The Force Awakens.
But it was also, I mean, I think that was also really poetic because, it was like he ultimately didn't kill his dad. Is that a huge thing about Force Ghosts, right, is the fact that they're with you, that like these people won't leave you, like that emotional connection is so powerful. And it's like that, even though Han died physically, like he still couldn't betray the fact that he loved Han, he loved Han, he loved his dad, and he didn't want to let that part of him go. So, yeah, he smoked him. Like he absolutely cut him down in cold blood physically. But, him reappearing before him like that was just this really sincere moment of the fact that, yeah, he's still very much that child.
And even too, like during that scene, like when he turns around, he says "Dad," and all of a sudden he's just gone. And then later on in the film, you even get that little like tribute to his dad when he pulls that lightsaber out from behind him, and he just gives that little cocky shoulder shrug, like that Han Solo from Return of the Jedi shrug, and he's like, "Yeah, so you guys are gonna die, so I hope you're ready."
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yes.
Like Kylo Ren is my second overall favorite character in the entire Star Wars series. Nobody's ever going to beat Yoda. I'm sorry. Kylo, you are a close second, my man, but Yoda all the way.
Now I'm trying to think of who my actual favorite character would be. Well, I guess Jar Jar Binks. No. No. Sorry.
I know. In comes the hate.
Yeah, no, I'm not even going to start that. Let's see. Let's see. I think it was a really good Star Wars movie. It gets way too much hate. I'm like 50-50 because I think that I think The Last Jedi was the weakest of the three films. But
yeah, I have very mixed feelings on The Last Jedi. Like there's things I love, there's things I hate, there's things I'm like legitimately mixed on. But like The Rise of Skywalker definitely gets like, it seems to have a lot more hate than The Last Jedi now.
Yeah.
Because the thing everybody likes to say about all these films is like, it feels like all these films are like individual because it seems like they try to completely retcon the film that came before them.
Yeah. And I've heard that too, right? That they feel very reactionary. And I 100% agree with that. I think what really killed the trilogy was the fact that they didn't just after they went with Rian Johnson, they didn't just say, okay, we're committing like full send, or like as soon as like the preliminary reviews for Force Awakens came out, they didn't just say, okay, we're committing to Abrams. Either option would have been better than just ping ponging back and forth.
Oh, definitely. If Abrams would have had the script for 8 and he would have had the direction of it, I think the trilogy probably would have done a lot better than it did.
Yep. Yeah, and that was another thing he mentioned, right? Is that each one of these movies was supposed to be kind of have a self-contained character arc for each one of the three characters, right? Like for Finn, Rey, and Poe each. And we didn't get to see that fleshed out, so that's why it felt a little lacking. Yeah, I mean, because gosh, yeah, I know it just and I think the Rise of Skywalker sours a lot of people, rubs them the wrong way because that's the end of 40 years of buildup, or 40, 50 years of buildup.
Yep, and I mean, The Force Awakens did a good job at building of what it was. Granted, yeah, a lot of people like to use the phrase, well, it's very similar to A New Hope. Well, I keep saying if JJ didn't make it like that, he wanted to give us something, familiar to ease our way back into the franchise instead of just being boom, here's a brand new Star Wars movie and none of us have a clue what's going on.
Right. And right. And I mean, I completely understand those arguments. I get that people are calling it derivative and all that, but at the same time, it's there were still new characters. There were still good homages to old characters. I thought each one of the characters introduced and all these interactions we got to see were enough that made it stand out to me as its own Star Wars film. And it also, I mean, then you look at the hate that the prequel series got, and it's, I don't know, I guess with a fan base as demanding and fanatical as the Star Wars fan base, I mean, really any fan base, it's hard to find that happy medium.
Yeah, every single Star Wars fan is going to be wired different. I bet you anything if you and I made a listing, I bet you our would be completely different.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And I mean, yeah, while that can apply to like any movie, I guess, or any movie series, it's like even with, MCU movies or even some DCEU movies, there's a lot more consistency in like where people rate things. But with the Star Wars movie, or Star Wars movies, I've had people tell me that The Force Awakens is their least favorite film, where it's like my most favorite film in the recent trilogy.
Yeah, I mean, for me, The Force Awakens was like overall my best movie theater experience because, like, as soon as it popped up a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, and you got to see Star Wars, you heard the iconic music. Everybody's like clapping and cheering, having a great time, laughing and everything. And you get towards where the Falcon is, and man, we're all cheering. Whoa, yeah, the Falcon! Like, the film's almost 5 years old, and I still get excited every time I see the Falcon.
Gosh, speaking of the Falcon, that goes into my best movie theater experience is Endgame. Like seeing Endgame opening night, man, Avengers Endgame.
Mhm.
Like, I don't think I'm ever gonna like have a bigger, just grander movie going experience than people watching Captain America wield Mjolnir for the first time, seeing, like Falcon come through the portal, like seeing the desperate, like the fight with Thanos and Tony snapping, like that's got to be my favorite, like all-time movie experience.
See, when I went to that, like I was like my jaw was on the floor. I looked over and my woman was with me.
Yeah.
She fell asleep right before the big battle.
Oh my gosh.
I have not let her live that down to this day. I'm like, hey, you remember when we went to Avengers Endgame? She's like, yeah. I'm like, yeah, it was a good time, wasn't it? Yeah, because we went to Far From Home.
Yeah.
And she looked at me. She's like, Iron Man died? I'm like, yeah, you fell asleep when it happened.
Oh my gosh.
That's what I said. I'm like, what? Like, really? Did you seriously just ask me this? Yeah, Iron Man died? Like,
it's like that's kind of a critical plot element to this movie. Like, I mean, critical for the plot to this movie.
I just looked at her. I'm like, God, you're just so lucky you're cute, or you'd be walking home tonight.
Oh my gosh, man! What was it? No, then there's also, and that was also my big fear is like of all the movies that spoilers were, of all the movies where spoilers were a problem is like Endgame, Avengers Endgame was like one of the biggest ones, but like because while it was a problem, like definitely like spoilers were a problem for The Last Jedi. I mean, for the Rise of Skywalker.
Yep.
It was still like you said, like 5 years building up to this. It didn't feel like there was a start to finish continuity of like something in the original trilogy building into what we had in The Rise of Skywalker. And maybe that was part of the problem for me, is that if it stuck with that tone in the first movie, like you said, maybe it felt like it was repeating, the first movie, the second, like the original trilogy. We would have gotten to see that play out on a little bit grander of a scale, but still.
Yeah. Falcon B with another one here. What is your guys' favorite Star Wars movie? Mine is Force Awakens for sure. I love The Force Awakens, but unfortunately, it's not my number one. My number one favorite Star Wars movie of all time is The Empire Strikes Back.
Nice.
It's the first one I've ever seen. And I started the film like right around the Battle of Hoth, and man, I could not take my eyes off that TV that entire like 2 hours watching that film. Like even to this day, I can get up in the middle of one of these Star Wars movies, go to the bathroom, get something to drink. Man, the second Empire comes on, I don't move. Like I don't care if I gotta go to the bathroom and I'm 30 minutes into the movie. I will not leave. I will watch this beginning to end.
And
what's your favorite movie?
I guess to that extent, my favorite is Rogue One. Like, that can kind of be a point of contention because it's a Star Wars story, not part of the main trilogies. But I thought it was really well done. How it just felt so fatal. Like it felt like it was such a dire struggle just to have any advantage over the Empire, that everything going on just like felt that you knew where it was going to go once you realized what they were trying to do. Like you knew that it was going to end in, well, just death. Like that they were literally trying to bring like one last shred of hope for the rebels to be able to stand against the Empire.
It literally puts the war in Star Wars.
Yeah, right. Exactly. It gives the rebels an actual fighting chance. And then, of course, you get to see Darth Vader come in at the end, and I mean that was terrifying to watch. Like, I mean, in a beautiful way.
Oh yeah, beautifully terrifying. Oh man, I was like a little kid in a candy store. I was sitting there while he's killing all them rebels. I'm like, they're dying. Like,
oh yeah,
so messed up. But it's like
it was like a 30 to 60-second scene, and it was like still like probably a highlight out of all of the Star Wars movies for me.
Yeah, it was very well. Like I don't know why, for the longest time I had Rogue One above The Force Awakens, but after really taking the time and thinking about it, I'm like, no, The Force Awakens has to be above, because it just, that experience I had in that movie theater, man, it's like nothing I've ever experienced before at a movie.
Oh no, that makes 110%, 110% sense. I mean, especially because like, once again, like, people, like the Avengers, like the MCU, everything they've done is like, once again, nothing that no one's ever seen, nothing that anyone has ever seen before. It was such a massive undertaking. But for Star Wars to come back with a new trilogy and, and 2 spin-off movies, I mean, that's also a huge deal, because that's like a 40 to 50-year-old franchise.
Yeah, and like even just last night, I sat down because I've been just wanting to watch it, but like I sat down and I watched Solo again. Like, I always look at it as it's the film I didn't need, but I'm glad that I got, because it's such a fun time, man. Just sitting there, just watching Han do his thing. Even the scene where Han's sitting there telling like, "Oh, we gotta put shields in the rear deflector shields," and the girl's just sitting there. She's like, Then Chewie starts doing his thing, and he sits down in that cockpit, and it's just an iconic. You get that great Star Wars music, and I'm just so giddy just watching that.
Yeah, and I haven't seen Solo yet. I keep telling myself I'm going to watch it, and I just haven't seen it yet. But it's not that I'm like avoiding it because it's a bad movie. Like, it's just, I felt that a lot of the reaction to it still seemed to be like almost like just needlessly negative. Like, there was just some backlash for it, and then Disney, and then kind of similar to the latest trilogy, right? Or the new trilogy. Disney kind of reacted by just shutting down the rest of their like side movie projects.
Yeah, they kind of move those more now to like Disney Plus shows, which
and
honestly is a smart move. In my opinion.
No, I think that was like the best call, because now you've got these incredibly high quality shows. I mean, like, it's insane. Like, The Mandalorian looked legit. Like, The Mandalorian looks like it was part of a it looks like it was a Star Wars movie. It's not like when you watch when you watch like Arrow or The Flash, and it doesn't, like, the costumes don't look like they're not of the same quality as like when you go like actually watch a DC movie or a Marvel movie.
They're just not up to that standard, basically.
Exactly. Yeah. That's what I'm trying to say. Is the standard was like consistent with the movies.
Yeah, I definitely can agree with you on that. I mean, I've watched The Mandalorian. I love it. I just rewatched it again here because I attempted to do a podcast talking about it, but I basically went like blank, so I didn't even really entirely go through with it. But it's like Obi-Wan. Like, I was so torn when they first said that Obi-Wan was going to be a Disney Plus show. At first, I was like, why? Put it on the big screen. But if you make it into episodes, because it's supposed to be like 6 episodes long, I think. I mean,
yep.
You'll really get more of like the backstory of Obi-Wan and like how he actually, has that PTSD after what happened with Anakin and how he's watching over Luke, and just the story can just go basically anywhere.
Yeah. And yeah, I mean that's why I am enjoying the potential of these new movies, or not new movies, but these shows more than, I guess, just more than the new trilogy, right? Because with things like The Mandalorian, and if these side projects work out, and with stuff like Rogue One and even Solo, it feels like there's so much untapped potential for the Star Wars universe that wasn't, that wasn't carried out by the new trilogy.
So like my big thing when it comes to watching Rogue One is like, it's one of the prime examples. Like, you don't need the Force, you don't need Jedi, you don't need Sith. Like, I love the Empire. The Empire is like my favorite faction in all of Star Wars, but like, you literally get like that war of it, like get that in-depth look at the rebellion, and give us a show or something like the in-depth look at like what it's like to be an Imperial stormtrooper or an officer or whatever.
Yep. And I mean, yeah, to that point, right, is the fact that, we do have the Force. We do have the Force in Rogue One, but like kind of from this like weird spiritualistic like universalist perspective, right? Is like the Force is treated, kind of sentient, or like it's you don't have to see lightning, you don't have to see Force pushes or Jedi mind tricks. It's just something that like people acknowledge as being present without actually having to use it. So
yeah, it's like as Yoda says perfectly in Empire, like the Force surrounds us, it's what binds us and everything. Like,
yep.
He words it perfectly.
Yeah. Yep. And that's part of, and that's what I liked about Rogue One, is I did not know what, I didn't know what to expect, and that helped me to just be all the more impressed when it came out.
It is a very, very well done movie. Like, my favorite character in that entire movie is Donnie Yen's character.
Yeah. Gosh. Yeah, and that's exactly what I mean, right? Is his character like just one being just incredibly skilled and like incredibly awesome, but also being like this Force like sage, without even like using the Force or having like the level of power that Jedis have. He's almost he's like able to rely on it, like kind of like faith, like to walk across the battlefield when people are shooting or what have you.
Yeah, just grab a stick and just go along. I am one with the Force is with me, just going back and forth like that.
Yeah, it was, and it still felt scary watching it because of the fact that, the movie indicated like, oh yeah, these guys are going to die. Like, they're racing against time. There's literally there's a Death Star floating above them. Like, there is no way this ends well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it definitely, one of my favorite parts of that whole movie is the ending, like how it literally ties in, and it's literally a straight shot into A New Hope.
Yep. And man, and that was also nice, is like recognizing like where it fit in the timeline. I mean, obviously you knew that it was around A New Hope because of the fact that they were getting the Death Star plans, but knowing specifically that it was literally like, like you said, like seconds, minutes, whatever, before the movie began, pretty much. Like, it, I don't know, that just
like even bringing Peter Cushing back to life, playing Tarkin, like it was insane. And even like that ending that you only get to see it for like a couple seconds, but like seeing a young Carrie Fisher's face, man, it's like, whoa.
Yeah.
Like when that rebel officer goes through that door and you just see the white veil and the white dress, like immediately you're like, oh my God.
Yeah. Okay, so speaking of which, how do you feel about her? How do you feel about Leia being a Jedi?
It makes sense. It really does, because like you can definitely tell like throughout, well, I guess maybe not entirely throughout, but like in Empire, like when Luke calls out to her, like, she she senses him, she hears him, she goes to find him. And, she still has that, like, feeling of the Force, being there. Like, now she knows she's a Skywalker, like Luke, just like Vader, finding out everything with Darth Vader. I would have liked to have seen her, play more of, like, a Force Jedi kind of role a little bit instead of just making her a general. But I do like how they let her, do the Force a little bit throughout the movie.
Yeah, and I think that was part of me. Yeah, that's a little bit of what like rubbed me, kind of confused me was in The Last Jedi how she
floated through space.
Yeah,
the Superman or Superwoman, however you want to word it, I guess.
Yeah.
Falcon B, are you guys excited for Tenet? I'll let you start this one off.
Yeah. Yeah, I am incredibly excited. Man, I love Christopher Nolan movies. Man. Yeah, no, there's not much more to say, right? Other than I'm excited for Tenet. Like there's not a Christopher Nolan movie I haven't enjoyed. I'm not even that big of a war or history film person. That's not really a genre that I gravitate towards. And I was still blown away by Dunkirk. And then, of course, Interstellar is probably one of my favorite, if not my favorite movies of all time.
See, I haven't seen that one yet. I haven't even seen, there's so many Christopher Nolan movies I haven't seen yet. Like, I haven't seen Inception yet, and I know that's on Netflix. But I really don't have an opinion on Tenet. It looks kind of, I don't know, doesn't really make a lot of sense to me, I guess.
Yeah, it's and I think that's why I'm excited is I want to see where things go. I mean, I think if there's another trailer, I did a trailer reaction to it because I'm stoked on it, and yeah, I'm excited for it and I want to see where it goes. But I mean, if another trailer were going to drop, I probably wouldn't watch it because I understand the general idea of where they're going. I mean, when I say general, I mean very, very, very vague overview. But that's part of what makes Nolan films nice is how everything ties together. And when they take this kind of, not even a twist, but just a sharp right turn from where you thought it was going, or in terms of the established rules of the world you're in or something like that.
Do you think it's going to get pushed?
Oh yeah, I do personally. Even stuff like Black Widow got pushed back to November, and this quarantine, shelter, stay in place, a pandemic, anything you want to use to describe it, just with COVID-19, I think we're not in the clear yet. So, I personally think it's going to get pushed. I don't know how far back it will be, but I honestly kind of hope it gets pushed just because it seems like that might be a more responsible thing to do.
Yeah, because as of right now, my most anticipated film of the year is, as of now, I think still a go. I just don't know if that's going to get pushed back or not. But
wait, what movie?
Halloween Kills.
Oh yeah, that doesn't come out this year.
It's supposed to come out in mid-October sometime. So I'm looking forward to that one. That's my most hyped film of the year.
Yeah, because they're doing, what is it? They're doing Halloween Kills. Let's see, Halloween Kills, and then Halloween Ends, right? That's next year, or?
Yep, Halloween Ends will be next October.
Dang, man, I'm just surprised they brought it back and it worked.
They did such a fantastic job with Halloween 2018.
Yeah, and being one of those guys who grew up watching everyone did, watching Jason and Freddy, and then watching them try to pull off Jason versus Freddy, and then Jason X, and all these Freddy, Nightmare on Elm Street, the new Nightmare, all these horror movie franchises that have tried to modernize or Oh wait, yeah, there was even a new Friday the 13th. Forgot that they did that remake.
Mm-hmm.
But there's all these like horror franchises, old school, that are like kind of trying to revive, especially because we're in this kind of horror movie renaissance of sorts, right? That that Halloween of all movies, like making it back was impressive.
Yeah, I was very impressed. It's almost in a weird way like a return to form kind of thing. Like Myers is just killing to kill. He is not after Laurie Strode like at all.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, I'll even say it too, like the Child's Play remake from last year, it was okay. It's definitely, not original, 1980s Child's Play, but still not the worst of the franchise. You still got Seed of Chucky.
Yeah. Oh gosh, I forgot about Seed of Chucky. That was, I think, were Hollywood Videos still a thing back then? We rented it from a Hollywood Video or a Blockbuster, and man, that was not a good investment.
Yeah. I think Blockbuster was like just starting to go out of business that year because I was. When I was younger, I used to love that movie, and I got older and I watched it again. And I'm like, whoa, what? Why did I like this? What's the matter with you, SPC?
Yeah, gosh, no, hey, whatever, man. Everyone's got their thing. It's like I like Pacific Rim way too much, and
dude, Pacific Rim is good. I went to both of them in theaters, and I had a fun time with them.
Yeah. No, I mean, and like I just grew up watching like a lot of like Gundam and giant like Evangelion and giant robots and Megas XLR when that was still a thing on Toonami. I mean, or Cartoon Network. It's so.
Did you ever watch Zoids?
Oh yeah, man, I forgot about Zoids. My brother had a Liger Zero growing up.
Oh yes, Liger. Oh man. That's such an underrated show compared to Gundam. I love Zoids.
Yeah. No, that's. Yeah, but no. I guess at the end of the day, I guess just with respect to comics, Star Wars, anime, whatever floats your boat. I mean, just. That those are such intense fan bases. Like, I mean, especially when you get in the nuance of either the trilogies and the Star Wars, like trilogies, characters, arcs in Star Wars, or runs, writers, characters in comics, and then just anime and manga is a whole just mixed bag all its own. I guess that in general, like, yeah. Being a geek is about like sharing your kind of love of those things, not like just gatekeeping or, keeping people like, casting people out for trying to like find out why you like something or trying to, become a part of that community.
Exactly. Like express yourself, like get yourself out there, like tell people what you like. Don't just hide it. Just be you.
Yeah.
Like that's how I am. Like people look at me and they can't believe that, I like Star Wars and I like superhero movies and stuff. People ask me like, "Oh, you must like sports and fishing and stuff." I'm like, no, I like video games and comic stuff and nerd stuff. Like I'm the straight up definition of a nerd. And they're like, "Oh, I would have never expected that." I'm like, yeah, I mean, things change over the years.
Yeah.
So, but. All right, man. We've been going pretty strong here for a good long while. Do you got any final closing comments or questions or anything before we end this podcast?
No. I mean, honestly, just thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. Like I've said, I've never like actually live streamed before, so it's a new experience. And thanks for just helping me figure it out and just showing me the ropes.
Yeah, man, not a problem. I mean, thank you very much for having me on here. As for those of you guys who are just tuning in, I had his friend Sean Chandler on here a couple weeks back, and I've been very interested in like getting somebody here to talk about something a little new, like comic books and stuff. So you actually were the first guy I thought of. So
hey, well, I appreciate that, and always happy to talk about comics or just geek out.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely would love to have you back here for a future installment. Maybe we can talk about a movie or talk about a series or whatever. I'm game for whatever, man.
Hey, sounds good to me. Thank you, Austin.
Yeah, anytime, man. So guys, that is going to do it for this episode of the Midwest Cantina podcast. I want to thank Andy again for being on here. Make sure you guys check out his channel. I have it down in the description box below. Go subscribe to him. Send him some of that SPC love. And like this video. Subscribe if you haven't already. And we'll see you next time.